Okay, good Erev Shabbos to all. We're up to the Mishnah on Mem Hey Amid Aleph. So there are psukim that describe what is you're supposed to destroy Avodah Zorah. So in the Devarim Yud Beis, Abeit Habdun Es Kol HaMakomas, you should totally destroy all the places Asher Avdu Sham Hagoyim, Asher Atem Yoshim Osom, that you're coming to inherit. Es Elohayim Ala Harim, their gods on the mountains, Haramim, the high mountains, Val Gavoyas on the hills, the Sachas Kol Eitz Ranon, and all underneath all fresh or green trees. That's one pasuk. Another pasuk says, "Psile Elohayim Tishrem Beish." The getchkes you should go ahead and burn in fire. Like Sachmoid Kesef V'Zav Aleihem, not desire the Kesef V'Zav is upon them. L'Kachtaloch, and you should go ahead and take it. Pen Tivakesh by Kitavas Hashem L'Kechahu. So you destroy that. So we have two psukim, and we're going to go see the machlokes exactly. What exactly is a mitzvah to destroy? What exactly is there a mitzvah to destroy? So we're beginning on Mem Hey the Mishnah. Hanachrim ha'oivdim es harim, the goyim who serve harim is the mountains, gavois are hills, heim mutarim, the mountains and the hills are muta. So let's say you would use some stones from the mountains themselves. Let's say you would go ahead and cut out from the mountains themselves some stones, or you would go ahead and plow and plant on the mountains. That would be permitted. That would be permitted. I served as an Avodah Zorah. We'll see. Umasha aleim asurim. But what's on the mountains would be asar. Rashi says, Kigon, im tzipum zav v'kesef. If there's zav v'kesef on the mountains, right? There's let's say ore on the mountains, silver ore or gold ore. Asa shnem alei sachmei kesef v'zav aleihem v'lekach l'cha. V'afagav de'inu lava v'ydis kechavim mikri like mitzri. Even though the kesef and the zav are not avodah zarah, nonetheless, gezeres hakasiv. It's a gezeres hakasiv. The tolisha aleihem, that's disconnected from the mountains. Kitolish shel shar avodas kechavim shenem alei sachman aleihem al kol shehin ne'avadim mashma on anything they serve. V'al karchenu on utzrichen lefarish the lav avodas kechavim mikri damina ba'sheichet. Anyway, Rashi goes on, but l'chal hapachis. That even though the mountain isn't avodah zarah, but we're going to see gezeres hakasiv that's on the mountain is what is not asa. As we just said, you can go ahead and use the stones on the mountain, but what's on them would be asa. Shenemar le'sachma kesev v'zav aleim. That's the Tanna Kama. Rabbi Yossi Gluli Omer Elohayim Aloharim Eloharim Elohayim. Hashtas Rabbi Yossi Glili is coming to explain the words of the Tanna Kama. What's the reason? In fact, he's arguing, and the Gemara is going to have a machlokes, exactly what the machlokes is between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yossi Glili. But says Rabbi Yossi Glili, why are the mountains themselves, even though they're served as avodah zarah, why is it mutter b'hana? Because it says Elohayim al harim, below harim Elohayim. The gods on the mountains are rasa, but not the mountain itself as a god. Elohayim al gavois. The gods on the hills. So if that's the case, right? Why isn't Asherah Asa? Because it says, guys, it says again, if you're going through the pasuk says Elohim Eloharim Haramim the Alagavois the Sachas Kol Eitz Ranon. So let's make the same drasha, just like we say Elohim Allah Harim V'loya harim, ala gavois v'loya voice, ala eitz v'loya eitz. In other words, if the theme of this pasuk is it itself is not an avodah zarah, so just as it says harim gavois, it says eitz. So therefore, it should be what's on the eitz is asa, but the eitz itself, just like the mountain and the hill, is not asa. The eitz should be asa as well. So therefore, that's what's troubling the Mishnah. That's what's troubling the Mishnah. So therefore. If that's the case, based upon that pasuk, why is an eitz and Asherah asa? Because what? It has the hand of man literally in between. A man plants the trees, a man does not make the mountain, a man does not make the hills, but a man does make the trees. Anything that has tfisas adam is asa. Okay, because the man plants it. So again, Tanna Kama tells us that the mountains themselves are not asa, the hills are not asa, right? However, the gold and the silver on them are, Rabbi Yossi Aglili says that that only the mountain, what's on the mountains, not the mountains, what's on the hills, not the hills. However, we have a Gezeris HaKosiv, despite the fact we should darshan Eitz Ranon, what's on the Eitz and not the Eitz itself, we have a Gezeris HaKosiv to go ahead and say that the Ashereim Tis from the Eitz, you should burn their what? The Asheres. Okay. And we said, and that's Tvisas Yad. Amr Rabbi Akiva, ani oivin, very funny lashon. I will explain for Adam lefanecha and express and judge in front of you. Kol makom shata moitza har gavoya v'giva nasa. Any place you find a high mountain and a raised hill, the eitz ranon and a fresh green tree, da sheyesh sham avodas kechavim. In other words, I'll give you a little hint, says Rabbi Akiva, as to why eitz is in the same pasuk of harim and the same pasuk as gavois, even though halachically it's not the same. And the answer is, you're coming to Eretz Yisrael, there's the mitzvah to destroy Avodah Zorah. Here's your semel, here's your siman to know where the Avodah Zorah is. It's going to be on the mountains, it's going to be in the hills, and it's going to be underneath the trees. That's what you should know. Okay. Let's see Rashi on the last point. First, let's go Rabbi Yossi Aglili Aimer. Go up right before it gets wide, 2 lines up. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Aimer. Hari amikum milamadnu. The pasuk of what? Of Elohim Eloharim, Elohim Eloharim. Shemechuba ein nesar. Mechuba is not asar. Shenemar abi tabon es kol hamekoymes asher ovdu shamagoyim. Uma toivdu es Elohim Eloharim. Mashmot slomim upisaleim shaloharim. The images and the getchkas on the tree on the mountains. Kruya Elohim. That's called Elohim. But the mountain itself is not. If that's the case, as I spoke out, why isn't Asherah Asa? That what's underneath the tree is a God, but not what's on the tree. Is connected to the earth. Why is it Asa? The pasuk says, and the Ashereim you should cut down. Okay. So what's it also? The Gemara gives a reason for the sheish but tfisas yedei adam. The Kiva says, "Ani oivdin v'adon lefanecha." Says Rashi, "Efresh lashon oivdin means I'll explain v'adon lefanecha. She'ein lanu lidroish miuta mitachas eitz ranon. You don't have to make the limit of tachas eitz ranon. Elo avodas kechavim. It's there for what? Shnei nemar elo limsa lehem simone makam shuikilim amoyrim lavayit shema by the kechavim. They should check for it there. The yavarum, and they should go ahead and remove it. However, Rabbi Akiva does go ahead and make the drasha on the haharim and on the what and on the mountains. No, he doesn't say that that's for a sign. He does make that drasha as well, that similar to the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi Aglili, that only the mountains, only what's on the mountains, but not the mountain itself. I will call eitz ranon sivalanu la'abi b'makam acher v'ashereim tisvim be'esh. Therefore, I don't need the pasuk v'hachalei nakala ela mishum simona. Therefore, it's for the siman. In other words, since I have a pasuk to tell me the eitz is asa, it nimsa that the eitz in this pasuk is extra. What's it extra to teach me? That's where you should go check out the Avodah Zorah. Vashen came the harim and the gavois. He would admit what's on the harim, what's on the gavois is asa, but they themselves are not asa. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi Aglili Hainu Tanakama. Rabbi Yossi Aglili is the same as the Tanakama. What's the difference between Rabbi Yossi Aglili and the Tanakama? Apparently, he's saying the same thing. He's bringing the pasuk to teach me that what? He's bringing the pasuk to teach me. He's bringing the pasuk to teach me that that the mountains themselves are not asa. So that's exactly what the Tanakama said. Only what. So Amar Rami Bar Chama says Rami Bar Chama, right? Says Rami Bar Chama Am Reish Lakish, name Reish Lakish. Tzipui har kehar ikabinayu. Whether the covering on the mountain is like the mountain there is. Tanakama Savar Tzipui har einoi kahar. Now the kahar, guys, is mutabana. But the tzipui, what's ever covering the mountain, if you have any gold on the mountain or silver on the mountain, is not like the har. And therefore it will be asa bahana. That's the Tanakama. Umitzer, and it's asa. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Savar tzipui har harihu kehar. The tzipui of the har is like the har. Comes out that Rabbi Yossi Aglili is coming to be makel, not machmir. The Tanakam is usring gold ore, and Rabbi Yossi Aglili is mattering gold ore. He's mattering gold ore. Let's see Rashi. Tanakam is sabat sipui har enu kahar umitzer dichsiv leisachmei kesef aleim kol shaleihem. So the Tanakama, if you look at line 3 up in the Mishnah, leisachmei kesef azav aleihem. So therefore, he said you should desire that, meaning he's answering the gold ore and the silver ore from that pasuk. But Rabbi Yossi Aglili did not bring that pasuk. Rabbi Yossi Aglili the sabak sipui har batal legabe har. It's batal to the har, and therefore it's muta. The kivin the har lava vaydes kechavim sipui nami loy mitzar va'aleim dekra apsile elahayim telushin kai. It says pasuk psile elahayim you should destroy. That's not when they're covering the mountain, but when they're images made out of gold separate from the mountain. So since the Tanakama guy's eye contact, since the Tanakama learns out from the pasuk of leisachmoi kesev izav, why do we learn? Right, he's learning from there. Therefore, he would say that is asa. He would say that what. That is asa. Don't desire it. So therefore, he holds it's not like the mountain because the mountain is muta. Rabbi Yossi Galili, however, on the other hand, he says that what's on the mountain, he doesn't bring this pasuk. He brings the pasuk Elohim ala harim, and even the ore that's on the harim would be what would be mutter. So it comes out according to the opinion of Rami Bar Chama in the name of Reish Lakish. Rabbi Yossi Galili is a makel because he's permitting you to use the gold ore. There's a different opinion. Rav Sheshes is of the opinion, the Kuli Almut Sipui Har Eina Kahar. Everyone holds, even the Tanakama would hold, Sipui Kahar is not Kahar. Even Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds, Even Rabbi Yossi Aglili would hold Sipui Kahar is not Kahar, and therefore what? He would hold its Asa. Right? He would hold its Asa. That's not the difference between the two. Again, Light Reish Lakish, Light Rabbi Yossi Aglili, it's Mutta. Rav Sheshes, even Rav Yossi Aglili would be maida that the gold ore is asa. Okay, then what's the nafkamina amid beis? V'hacha be'ilan shenatu ulebesayif avdu kemiflagi. And what's the machlokes over here? Is you planted it, and the end you served it. Now, there's a chilik between planting an ashera tree for the purpose of an ashera. Everyone would hold that's asar. What about a tree that you planted? As part of J&F, I shouldn't even say that, chas v'shalom. You planted a tree for good reasons, and then you decided to serve the tree. Is that have a din of an asherah or not? That's the machlokes between the two. Tanakam savar ilan shenatu l'b'seif avdu muta. An ilan that you planted and the end you served it is muta. Rabbi Yossi Aglili savar ilan shenatu l'b'seif avdu asar. Good. Now, where do you know this from? Let's see Rashi. Ilan shenatu shaloi l'shem ashera. When you planted it, you don't plant it for the purpose of ashera. Well, b'seif avdu the shamil tanakama the amar harim ugavois sharu hu adin kol kiyotze behen shemechubarim. So anything that's attached to them is muta. Anything that wasn't initially for avodah zarah. The ezehi. Ashera, Asura. So again, according to them, what's an Ashera that's Asur? Shenatu mitchilu lekach. You went ahead and you planted for that purpose. The tfisis yad adam ain't klum. The man-made, the heter of the man-made planting is only elakain hi l'shem avodas kechavim. Aval natu garin. If you plant a seed, shaloi l'shem Ashera, ein zu tfisis yadei adam. Hoyel v'hi shaita lavda daite lavodas kechavim. So since at that time it wasn't the Shem Avodah Zarah, in other words, if the guy plants it with the purpose of Avodah Zarah, so the tfisis yad of a person is for Avodah Zarah, memela the Asher is asa. Masha'en kain, if you planted the garin, if you planted the Shem a tree, then says right, then says the Tanakama, it would be what? It would be muta. Umemaiti le mitachas kol eitz ranon, v'loy eitz atzmai. So very good. Where's his miyut? Just like guys. Now, okay, so let's go through it. What's on the mountain, but not the mountain? What's on the hill, but not the hill? What's under the tree, but not the tree? If what? If you planted it l'shem garin. If you planted it for the purpose what? Of being a what? of being a seed. Okay, that's the Tanakama. So guys, that's his heta. That's his heta. What's the source for the heta? It's the same as the mountain's muta, and the hill is muta, the eitz is muta. That's the heta of the Tanakama. For us, the Rabbi Yossi continues Rashi. For us, Rabbi Yossi aglili lemeimar, ilan shenatu garin afilu shaloi l'shem hashera ulebesayif avdu, and then you served it asa. Why? Dami lahar. It's not similar to the mountain. Shari yeshbot tfisis yad adam b'netiya, because it's not God made, it's man made. Hilkach taisvasai asa. Aval ikra taisvasai. Whatever grew by the hand of man is asa. Aval ikra kaidim sheshtach v'loi. But the trunk, what was grew before he bowed down to the tree, moided the shari. It'll come on, as we'll see later on. So comes out like this, fellas. According to Rabbi Shlakish, the machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi Galili is gold ore. Like the Tanakama, the gold ore would be asa, and according to Rabbi Yossi Galili, the gold ore would be muta, because he has a pasuk like Sachma, right? He has a pasuk like Sachma, the Tanakama, and he doesn't. According to Rav Sheshes, they're both asa. According to Rav Sheshes, they're both asa. That's not the machlokes. What is the machlokes? Where you took a tree and you planted it shaloi l'shem avodah zarah. Okay. According to Rami Bar Chama, they're both asa. According to Rami Bar Chama, they're both asa. According to Rav Sheshes, the Tanakama would say it's muta, and Rabbi Yossi Galili would say it's asa. So according to Rav Sheshes, Rabbi Yossi Galili is being machmir in both cases. He's saying it's asa. According in the first case, he's saying what? And in Rav Sheshes says that the Tanakama is makel in both cases, but in the first case, not is asa. But according to Rabbi Yossi, according to Reish Lakish, the Tanakama acid the gold ore, and Rabbi Yossi mated it, so he was a makel. According to Rav Sheshes, it's both asa. And then you have the opinion of the opinion of machlokes according to Rav Sheshes. According to Rav Sheshes, the machlokes is what is by the tree that was planted and it grew. According to Rav Sheshes, Tanakama says it's muta, and Rabbi Yossi would say it's asa. Okay, so Mimai midiktani seifa b'fnei ma asher asura b'fnei sheyesh bo tfisis yidei adam v'chol sheyesh bo tfisis yidei adam is asa. Okay, then it repeats itself. V'chol sheyesh bo tfisis adam l'asuye mai lav l'asuye ilan shenatul b'sleiv avdu, an ilan that you planted and the end you serve. Okay, so that's the reason the Tanakama. That's the reason the Rabbi Yossi Galili says this article. Right, go look back at the Mishnah for a second, guys. Look back at the Mishnah for a second. Rabbi Yossi Galili, right in the middle. Why do you have to repeat that, guys? Not only if you planted it l'shem avodah zarah, even if you planted it l'shem a tree, it's coming to include that what? It would be asa. So that according to the Tanakama, it's muta. If you planted it initially as a tree, guys, this is important to get the Gemara. According to the Tanakama, the rest of the Gemara is going to be on this. According to the Tanakama, if you originally planted it as a tree and then served it, it will be asa. It will be muta. According to Rabbi Yossi Galili, since the lashon of chol sheish tfisis yad la'asuye comes to include even if you planted it l'shem regular and then it went to avodah zarah, it's asa. So that's the machlokes according to Rav Sheshes between Rabbi Yossi Galili and the Tanakama. Guys, good? Okay, weiter. V'af Rabbi Yossi ben Yehuda savar ilan shenatu lebesleif avdu asar. So we have Rabbi Yossi ben Yehuda agreeing with Yossi Galili. Again, the Chachamim saying it's mutar, and the Tanakama agreeing with Rabbi Yossi Galili, and Rabbi Yossi ben Yehuda agreeing with Rabbi Yossi Galili. It's asar. The Tanya. Rabbi Yossi ben Yehuda Aimer mitoy shenemar Elohayim Alohorim. Below Hahorim Elohayim, the Getchkes on the mountain. Below Hahorim Elohayim, but the mountain itself is not Mishkan God. Elohayim ala Gavois, below Gavois Elohayim. Shoymei ani Tachas kol eitz ranon Elohayim, right? Veloi ranon Elohayim. Good. In other words, guys, let's be consistent. The three things in the pasuk, right? Harim, Gavois, eitz. So if the mountain is not and the Gavoy is not, then the eitz is not. That's what I would say. So I would say that. Therefore, to avoid that, we have a gezeres hakasem, bashareim tisafun be'esh, and the asherah trees you should burn be'esh. Elatachas koletz ranan lamali. So therefore, if it's asa, what are you telling me? So that's Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva who the asa. Rabbi Akiva ani oivin ve'edbach lefanecha kol makom shatam moitze har. Gavoya v'giva nisa. Anytime you find a high mountain or a raised hill, the eitz ranon or a green fresh tree, dash yesh shama b'is kechavim. Okay, very good. So what do we have right now? We have Rabbi Yossi. We have guys. Let's just count the ballot. If you have a tree that you planted normally, then you switch it to an asherah. Says the Tanakama, it's muta. Says Rabbi Yossi Galili, it's asa. Says Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda, it's asa. Okay. It says eitz in the pasuk, just like it says harim, the harim amuta, the gvois amuta. But it says vasharem tisfun beish. It says you have to burn the asherah. I have no choice. So what's the eight? Then therefore, what is the eitz takas the eitz coming to teach me? It's the Torah giving me a way that there's a mitzvah to get rid of the Avodah Zorah. Abi tabdun. It's a good way. You don't want to know where it is? Go look in the high mountains. Go look on the gvois and go look what in the asherah. Go look in the underneath the tree. For Rabbanon, now the Rabbanon, they hold this eitz as mutter, guys, right? They hold a tree that's planted for regularly, it's mutter, baruch and mem heyom base in the middle. For Rabbanon, hai bashareim tisfun be'esh my of delay. What do they do with it? Since they hold it's mutter, right? What do they do with what ashareim tisfun be'esh? Says Gemara, mi boy le'ilan shenata mitchila lekach. I'll tell you pashit, not for a tree that they planted for normal. It's for a tree they planted for Avodah Zarah. If they planted a tree for Avodah Zarah, you have to burn it. You have to burn it. But if you planted it for what? For regular use, then what? Then it's mutter. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda nami mi boile lahachi. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, how could he use this pasuk to teach me a tree planted normally that then you switched in the middle? That's asa. Don't I need it to teach me that what? That a tree that was initially planted as an asherah you burn. Rabbi Yosef of Yehuda, he said above, line 14, what did he say? Vasharei tisvim be'esh. He brought this pasuk, right? What's this pasuk teaching me? This pasuk's teaching me that what? That a tree that was planted normally, and then you switch gears, you burn. Okay, Fred the Gemara now. 1 second, I don't understand. What is it? I need this pasuk to teach me. I need this pasuk to teach me a regular tree that's planted. A tree that's planted as an asherah. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yossi Agli nami boy lahachi. Says the Gemara, hachanami. You're right. You're right. Vashrei tisum me'esh. You know what I need it for? I needed to teach me that a tree that was planted for an asherah you burn. Ela ilan shenatel b'seif avdu minalei. So where does Rabbi Yosef Yehuda know it's asar? Again, we said Rabbi Yosef Yehuda said a tree that's planted normally and then you switch gears is asar. Where does he know it from? It says ashereim tisfun be'esh. And I need that. What do I need that for? I need it for a tree that's planted for Avodah Zarah. It says Menara, nafkalei miv ashereim tigadeyon. I learned it from the pasuk says, let me get it. You should break down their mizbechos. You should break down their monuments. And their trees you should burn in fire. And the getschgalach tigadeon you should cut off. You should totally destroy them from this place. Next pasuk, the kiim. This is before, it's in Perek Zayin. Kiim koi sasu lehem bizbechasem titotzom atzabeim tishaberu v'ashereyem tigadehun. Now, tigadehun, guys, is mashma the growths. It's mashma what grows from the tree, the branches of the tree. Right? What it grows from the branches of the tree. So, if you planted a regular tree, you know what's asa? But it is asa is the branches that grow from the tree. So we thought he's learning from the pasuk V'ashreim tisufun be'esh. He needs that for a tree that was planted l'shem Asherah, a regular tree. That. What about you're telling me he holds it's asa, a tree that's planted normally and grows? Right? Where do you know that from? A tree that's planted normally and grows. That he knows from the word Asherem Tigadeyun. Eze eitz she yigedua asar v'ikrei mutter. What's a tree that the growths are asar, but the ikra is mutter? Haviyomer ilan shenatul b'seif avdu. So you have a tree, you planted it, and then you made it into an avodah zarah. What's the avodah zarah? The part that grew, but the part that grew beforehand and not after you made it into it is mutter. Now here's your problem. Okay, so again, the Chachamim say it's mutter. The Chacham say it's mutter, right? The eitz is going to be mutter. How do you know a tree that what an asherah tree, a regular asherah? Ashreim tisfum be'esh. Says Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, a tree that you planted regularly is asa. How does he know a tree that you planted for avodah zarah? How do you know that? Ashreim tisfum be'esh. Read the Gemara. So if he uses that for ashreim tisfum be'esh, where does he know a tree that you planted l'shem of tree and turned it into an asherah? You trans into that. Where does he know that from? He knows that from the ashereim tigadeyun, which is a tree that only the growth is us and the tree is mutter. It's a tree you planted normally and then you switch gears. Oh, here's the problem with that. If you look on the Gemara, it's about 14 lines down from the top. Sheme'ani tachas koleitz ranon Elohayim v'loy eitz ranon Elohayim Talmud loymar v'ashereim tisfum be'esh. So you see that he learns it out from the pasuk Ashereim tisfum be'esh. He doesn't learn out from Ashereim tigadeyun. He doesn't learn from that pasuk. So you have a problem. How can you tell me that the source for what? A tree that you planted normally, and now that tree you switch gears, and now you make it into asherah. You learn it from Vashrem Tigadeyun. That's not what the Brisa says. It's not the words of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. The words of Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda is you learn out from Ashereim Tisfum Be'esh. Nothing, we're on Amid Beis about a little past the halfway point down. Says the Gemara. V'ashereim Tisfum Be'esh Kanasav La. He brings the pasuk V'ashereim Tisfum Be'esh Talmuda, and for the Gemara, Ilulay Nemar Kamar. Ilulay Nemar Tisfum Be'esh. If it didn't say that pasuk, Hayisi Omer, I would have said Ashereim Tigadeyun, Be'ilan Shinatim Mitchila Lakach. In other words, if I didn't have the pasuk Ashereim Tisfum Be'esh to teach me that a tree planted as an Asherah tree is Asur, I would have learned it out from the pasuk about Ashereim Tigadeyun. But now that I have the pasuk of Ashereim Tisfum Be'esh, now that I have that pasuk, I will learn the pasuk Ashereim Tigadeyun to teach me a tree that was planted as a regularly and trans into avodah zarah. So Ilulay Nema, come on, Ilulay Nema Tisfum Be'esh. If they didn't say that pasuk, Hayisi Omer, I would have said the Ashereim Tigadeyun Be'ilan Shinatim Mitchila. I would say, guys, that's pasuk 1 and pasuk 2. Let's make it easy. Pasuk 1 and pasuk 2. If I didn't have pasuk 1 to teach me an Asherah tree, I would have used pasuk 2 to teach me a Asherah tree. But now, guys, that I have pasuk 1 to teach me an Asherah tree, I'm going to use pasuk 2 to teach me a tree that was planted normally, and then it morphed into avodah zarah. That's what it meant above. Pasuk number 1. For Rabbanon, who said that it's mutter, they said that a tree that morphs into a avodah zarah is mutter. Hi Basharim Tegadeo my of delay. Why did they use that pasuk for? Pasuk number 2. The Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Then Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Kidua oivdei kechavim kaibim l'kivush aretz. In other words, when we got into Eretz Yisrael, guys, we got very busy. All of a sudden, we had mitzvahs tuliyas baretz. We had to get rid of Amalek. We had to go ahead and get a king. We had to destroy the Zayin Umayis. We had to go ahead and destroy all the Avodah Zorah. What was the pecking order? What was the pecking order of what do we got to do first? You know what we got to do first? The Avodah Zorah Gidua that is obvious in the open, get rid of it. Then get rid of the Zayin Umayis. You capture the land, and then after that, then gay grub. Go ahead and go grub and go dig and look for that Avodah Zorah that is what that's not in the open. So that's what he used it for. Kidu become koydmin lekibush Eretz Yisrael. Kibush Eretz Yisrael koydmin lebir avodas kechavim. So you know what he uses it Asherim Tegadeim for the chachamim? A pecking order. When you get into Eretz Yisrael, the avodah Zorah that's out in the open, get rid of it. Then you go ahead destroy. Go ahead and destroy the Zayin Umayis. Then you go back. Okay. The Tani Rabbi Yosef. V'nitatztem es mizuchaysam v'hanach v'shibartem es matzeva v'hanach v'hanach sakadaitach safer boy. When do you leave it? You have to burn it. Some Rav Huna says Rav Huna hanach v'roidif. Go ahead, leave it. Be roidif the goyim v'yakach saruf, and then you burn it. Okay. Now, so that's the svara of what of the Chachonim. Now, since Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda uses that to teach me a tree that was that grew that you planted normally and grew as asabana, where does Rabbi Yosef Ben Yehuda know the pecking order from, guys? Guys, don't worry, I have a chart. We're going to go over the whole thing through the chart. It's going to back and forth. We're going to go over the whole thing. Okay, so now Rabbi Yosef Ben Yehuda high svara minale, since he uses pasuk 2. We're dealing with pasuk 2 now. Since he uses pasuk 2 to teach me that what. That it's asa, whatever grew after you what? You made it into an Asherah, even though you didn't plant it as an Asherah. Where does he know this pecking order from? It says, Abed Tabdun. Abed, first destroy, Yachak Tabdun. Okay. That the Oika by the Zorah, you have to go ahead and go get to the roots of it. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda, the Shar Shachra Minale, Nafklei Mivartim Eshemam in Amakim Hahu, totally obliterated. Rabbanon, Hahu Liknes Lashem. That's to give the Avodah Zarah a shame. There's a kino. You give the Avodah Zarah. He uses the pasuk to give Avodah Zarah a nickname. We don't want to call them a name. Like a nickname is not such a good thing. He went ahead to go ahead and give it a nickname. The Tanya. Am I in the right place? Lachlis l'shem, right? The Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer. You have to go ahead and uproot it. Talmud Loimar, Vivartem Eshemam. Amid Aleph. Amid Bekiva, Lekfanemar Abe Ta'abdun. Mashma already, you're already destroying everything. So came Talmud Loimar, Vivartem Eshemam min Amakam Ahu. It's Lekanis l'shem to give it a shame. Yachal l'shvach, I might think you give it a complimentary name. How could you think that you're giving it a good name? Ella yachol loy l'shevach loy l'ganai. I might think you give it a par of a name instead of a fleishiga name. Talmud Loimar shaketz tishakshenu v'tayiv ta'avenu kicherim hu. The Torah says totally shaketz lashon of disgusting the avodah zarah and hate the avodah zarah. And here's an example of a kinoi. Haketzad hayikarim nesa beis galia. If they called it beis galia, the house of a galia is a pile, a heap. You call it what? A ditch. You call it something what? You call it by a lower name. You call it by base karya. Ein kol, if they said the eye of everything, ein kites, you call it the eye of a thorn. So that teaches me. Okay, so let's summarize. Let's look at a summary of all these shitas over here, because there's so many. Okay, how do we get into this discussion, fellas? How do we get into the discussion? What was the machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yossi Aglili? So we said that a tree that was planted, not l'shem sheira, and then you switch gears. Says the Tanakama it's muta, says Rabbi Yossi Aglili is asur. The Gemara then switched from Yossi Aglili to include Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda. He also said it's asur. So now, look at the chart. Rabbanon is the one who says muta, guys. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda is one that says asa. Again, what are we dealing with? Dealing with a tree that you went ahead, and you planted it not for Avodah Zarah, but you switched gears. What is Vashareim Tisfum Be'esh? Le'ilan Shinatu Mitchil Avodah Zarah. Again, if I planted it initially for Avodah Zarah, that's what I planted it for, right? I planted it for Avodah Zarah, it's asa. We said, what does Rabbi Yossi Aglili do? Einachinami. Rabbi Yossi Aglili, he goes ahead and he agrees. He also agrees. Le'ilan Shinatu Mitchil Avodah Zarah. Vashareim Tegadeyun. This is pasuk number 2. Shegidu Avodah Zarah Koydmin L'Chshibas Eretz Yisrael. Since the Chachamim goals hold its mutter, since the Chachamim say it's mutter if you planted it for normal, not Avodah Zarah, what does he do with the pasuk? That there's a pecking order. Destroy the Avodah Zarah before Eretz Yisrael. What does Rabbi Yossi Aglili use it for? Elon Shenatu L'B'Seif Avdu. This is the key, right? An elon that you planted normally and the B'Seif you served it is asa. Okay. What do we do with the pasuk Abe Tabdon? That you have to be oiker the Avodah Zarah. Oiker, you have to go ahead and dig after it. What does Rabbi Yossi Yehuda do with it? He uses it for this. This teaches me the pecking order. Shekidu Avodah Zarah Koyd L'Kibush Eretz Yisrael. What does Vivartem Shemam teach me? Says the Tanakama to give a shame of Avodah Zarah, to give a nickname. And Rabbi Yossi Yehuda says to be oiker Avodah Zarah, but he does be oiker Avodah Zarah to be mashmash achravish. Go ahead. Be mashmash afterwards. So it's a good summary of exactly the different sheets over here, the back and forth.